Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I will show you how you can take the simplest possible guitar chord and from it derive and play all kinds of beautiful, lush, complex sounding chords. And to keep things simple, we're going to start with a basic C major chord, and then we're going to transform it and mold it and bend it, and from it derive all kinds of beautiful sounds. And it's actually easier to do it than to explain it, and so we're going to jump right in. And the triad we're going to use today is a C major triad. We're going to start on the 10th fret of the 4th string, that's our C, the root. Then we have E on the 3rd string on the 9th fret, that's our major third. And finally the 5th, we're going to play on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, G. Just like that. So this is our starting point. And of course we won't go through every possible chord you can derive from this because it's really endless. I keep coming up with them every day. And so this is just to give you a little bit of inspiration and maybe a little head start. So from this triad, if I were to create new chords, I would probably just simply modify it first to find the main or the most common ones, and certainly one of them would be the minor chord. How do you do that? Well, it's very simple. You take the 3rd E, lower it to E flat, and you get a minor chord. Then I would take it maybe a little further with the other triads, which are diminished, which is the same as minor, but lowering one half step, the 5th, from G to F to G flat. Sorry, names are important. It's G flat. And since we're here, I might as well also do the augmented triad, which is the same as major, but with the G raised to G sharp. And this already covers all 4 main triads. This already alone will allow you to harmonize pretty much any scale. But of course, we're going to go a lot further than this. And before we actually start adding notes, let's do 2 more 3-note chords. I hesitate to call them triads, but they are the sus2 and sus4 chords. sus2 chords are made of root and 2nd instead of 3rd. So in our case would be C, D, and G. It sounds very beautiful and very useful when you don't want to give it away, right? If it's major or minor, you can be a bit more obscure with and ambiguous with the sus2 chord. Then of course, if we've done the sus2, let's do sus4, which again gets rid of the 3rd, but this time is replaced by a 4th. So in the key of C, that would be F. And we'll find it here on the 10th fret of the 3rd string. That's my C sus4 chord. Again, very beautiful, kind of tends to the major, but it doesn't have to, but that's a cool little resolution. You'll find in a lot of classical music, actually. All right, so these are our main 3-note chords. Now, of course, because we're sitting here in the middle of the fretboard, it's kind of easy to add notes. And probably the first note I would think of when it comes to adding notes to a triad would be the 7th, right? The 7th chords are very common. And so let's maybe go through a few of them. We can start from the major triad, add a major 7th for a C major 7th chord. Okay? If I lower the 7th a half step, I would find a dominant 7th chord, C7th also known as. Okay, very common of course. A very bluesy sound. I could do the same thing with the minor triad. So I could have a minor triad with a major 7th, which is a bit of a weird chord. We'll find this later on with the harmonic minor and melodic minor, but a very common one would be the minor triad with a minor 7th. And just a little parenthesis here, you can try to memorize all this, and of course you can follow along here. If you're on my Patreon, you'll be able to download a neat little PDF companion to this video with all the chords. But really this is just to stimulate you to find your own chords. So I would suggest you actually play through everything I'm playing now, but as soon as possible you should go and find your own shapes. And to help you with that, in a second we'll move to another position so you get a different perspective of the same idea. All right, but let's keep going with the 7th. So now we played our C minor 7th. And there's another chord that's very common, which is a diminished triad with a flat 7, which is called the minor 7 flat 5. Okay, and there's another very common chord based on the diminished triad, which is the diminished 7th chord. And now this is a bit of a stretch, like that. And so very soon we'll work on a workaround for this, but we could keep going down and down and down depending how much we can stretch. Let's now move on to augmented triads for some really cool 7th action. So we have our basic triad. We can add to this a major 7th. This will give us a major 7 sharp 5 or an augmented major 7th. If you play jazz music, you'll find this. If I lower the 7th, this is basically an altered sound. It's a dominant sharp 5. Again, very common in jazz music and other styles too. I could also decide that I want to try and play in a suspended shape like this. It's a beautiful chord, very useful when you don't want that very specific dominant sound. You can mellow it out like this. Okay, so this is again just the surface, but let's add another note now, not the 7th. Let's move on to the 6th, and you'll be like, how can I add a 6th if the 7 is already stretching my fingers so much? Well, one thing you could do is stretch a little more. Not everybody can do this, but the beautiful thing about the guitar is that we get notes all over the place. So all you have to do is look for it, and you'll find a beautiful A up here. And this will be my C major 6th with the 6 at the bottom, which is no problem at all. I could also start from a minor triad and still have a 6th. Of course, I could have played it here for a bit of a stretch. And then you could have the flat 6. I love this sound. And again, it's endless. If you know more chords, feel free. I will stop right here, but you could do the add 9 chords, some of my favorite, and so on and so forth. Now, when we went down to the 6th, I said, you know, this is a bit of a stretch, and for some of you it might be hard to play, which really is no issue at all. It's very rare that finger or hand size or stretching or dexterity comes into play in actual playing. So you don't have to feel bad if you can't finger this chord. There's so many, you know, workarounds that it doesn't really matter. But anyway, let's now start from a different shape. We're going to stay in C major, but I'm going to play, and on the same 3 strings actually. Let's do that. Let's stay on the same 3 strings, but let's have a different inversion. I'm still playing C, E, and G, but in this order now. On the 5th fret, on the 4th string, I have G, and then I have C right below it, and then E below that. 5, 5, 5. So simple, right? And from here, I could do the same old thing. I could lower the 3rd for a minor shape. I could also lower the 5th for diminished. I could look for my G, raise it a half step, and do augmented. And then do all the chords, you know, the dominant, augmented, and that stuff. But I could also now look at what this specific position is more conducive to, right? And we can go back to the 6th now, that I have my C major triad here. If I want to add an A, a 6, it's as simple as doing this. That's it. That's all I have to do, right? And if I had started here, I might now realize that if this is the 6th and this is the flat 7, that's my dominant 7th chord. This is my major 7th chord. If I stretch a little more, I'm back to C. This is again a major chord with a bit of a different sound. I can maybe do a little bar here and find a power chord, the 5th chord. No major or minor thirds. Speaking of no thirds, I could go back to my shape here and go, you know what, I wonder if I replace the E for an F, what would that sound like? Well, of course, a C sus4. And if I lower it to the D, C sus2. C sus4 again works very well as a dominant chord. And then I can maybe go, why don't I add 2 notes to this triad? Well, very well. Let's do the 6th, but also the D, the ninth, and so this is a C 6/9. If I do it like this, this would be a C major 9 with both the B and the E. What if I do this? You might have guessed it, this is dominant 9. And then again, I can look for stuff all over the place. If I don't like this very high sound for major 7th, I could lower it to the lower string. It's a bit of a dissonance here because the B is so tense and it's at the bottom. Maybe I can try on a different string. Same deal, so maybe I would raise this one, lower this one. And I'm in a regular C major 7th, which you might have heard of. So you see, it never stops. And then from here, you could go, oh, I wonder if I lower this. It's a dominant 7th, and then I raise the 4th. It's a sus4, but I really like this, the sharp 4. That's a sharp major 7, sharp 11, which if I don't want to lose the 3rd, I have to play here. And this I realize it's going a bit too far, but you see what I mean. Everywhere you start on the guitar, you're surrounded by possibilities of sound. And this is not about learning chords. As a matter of fact, if you want to learn chords, this video here is almost 9 hours. And I go through every single chord there is, formulas, notes, even what scales to play on them, 3 or 4 fingerings for each of them. So if you want to learn guitar chords, this is it. This is different. This is just a demonstration of how many sounds you have around very, very simple shapes we all know. And it becomes truly endless. I'm going to stop here because I could keep talking for hours and still not cover the whole thing. Though hopefully you have learned something new. If you have, please do hit like and subscribe. And as always, I'd love to hear your comments. If you'd like to support this a bit further, Patreon link down below. No matter what you do though, I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye.